I told you last week that when I teach speaking from the heart, one of the exercises that I was taught in the beginning was to go to your bookshelves and see what spoke to you. And I had a book last week on Myrtle Fillmore, the Mother of Unity. And this week I went to the bookshelves, and there were 3. So, woohoo. Myrtle Fillmore, the Mother of Unity. And I'm just going to be going back a little bit and reminding us of our history. I think it's always good. And reminding ourselves of who we really are. We have added layers and layers on what we think and what we believe and what unity is, and it's kind of like that little kaleidoscope. You turn it like this and you turn it like that, and it looks different every time you turn it. So I just want to go back and remind us of a few things. So we talked about Myrtle last week, and of course we can't leave out Charles. I mean, there are 2 of them. And Charles Fillmore, really, they were co-founders of Unity. It's the only actual international ministry I know that was started by a couple. And it took the 2 of them to really come together with that spiritual intellect and all the scientific and wonderful things of Charles and the heart of Myrtle. And so we have a blend, and we have the opportunity to experience the blend of both of them. Well, Charles was born in a log cabin in Minnesota on an Indian reservation. His father left when he was young, and he became in charge of the family. He was self-taught. He had very little schooling, and every job he tried, he failed at. He tried working for the railroad. He tried selling in a store. He tried being a farmer, and every one he would fail at. And then he'd move to the next city, and he'd try again, and he believed. He just knew it, that he would be a success. And every time it failed. Eventually he came to a town, and there was a literary society, and that's where he met Myrtle. Now, he loved Emerson, Thoreau, Shakespeare, Tennyson. This young man who was self-schooled read and read and read. He said, it's almost like I lived with Emerson. He was in my head. His thoughts were my thoughts. Thoreau, all of these great writers out in the middle of nowhere. Here they are in a little town. They go, both of them, to a literary circle. Now, Myrtle was well-schooled. She had as much college as you could have as a young woman. She had gone to Oberlin and had a degree in writing. She wrote for newspapers. She did all kinds of things. She ended up teaching, and they met, and they found that they were similar. Now, a few weeks or months later, Charles said, I'm going to marry that woman. Now, he didn't really take into account he was 22 and Myrtle was 31. So there was a little age difference, and she wasn't quite as excited as he was. After a while, though, he convinced her. They both ended up traveling the country, working at different jobs. 4 years later, they were married, and 4 years later, they had 2 boys. Now, Charles kept trying different jobs, and he failed again and again and again. Never gave up. He was very spiritually minded. And as he said, I am eclectic about religion. I love that. I am eclectic about religion. What does that mean to you? Likes a little of that, a little of that, a little of that. It's what kind of chicken soup you like. It's what kind of a car you drive. Now, when I was growing up, there were really only 3 kinds of cars in the town I lived in. Ford, Chevy, Oldsmobile. Oh, that was bigger than we were. Cadillac, Lincoln, maybe. Okay, and also I was in the Midwest. We didn't have tacos. I remember when pizzas showed up in my little area. So eclectic means diversity to me. It's a willingness to see a bigger picture, not one right or wrong. So Charles really was eclectic about religion. Now, whenever he was in a town where there was a church, he would attend the church. He had nothing against that. He just looked at things a little differently. And Myrtle, many years later, said the same thing. I am eclectic about religion. Now, when they got to Kansas City, I told the story. Myrtle had known she had tuberculosis. She'd been given a diagnosis. She was going to pass away very early in life. And they went to a lecture, and you may remember what she heard, and that is, you do not inherit sickness. And so she began to work on that. She started to visualize. She knew that there was a divine presence in her, and that she, in communion with this divine presence, could heal. She did affirmations, visualizations, and sat in what she called the silence, listening to the divine presence in her, guiding her, healing her. Now, she did have 3 boys and a wonderful mother-in-law who cooked and cleaned. We're just saying that, to be honest. Now, Charles at this time, he's a scientist-thinking man, never studied science, but he was way ahead of his time. All the researchers have said the things that he talked about were much more at a higher level than scientists were at the time. And he watched her heal, and he couldn't deny it. And so he began sitting in the silence with her. And then their neighbors, and I've told this story before, and you've heard it before. Then their neighbors wrote to their relatives in the other part of the country, and then the letters got across the ocean, and then it spread. At one point, they had 4 people working for them. It was very soon they had hundreds. Now, they were not small thinking people. Remember our little logo here, the earth with wings, global. Charles was seeing a global movement of healing, of transformation. Now, in his book, The Unity Way, now this is published in 1982. I still have it. Down in the lower shelf. Had to dig around to find it. By Marcus Bach. And Marcus Bach is interviewing Charlie when he's 86 years old. Myrtle has passed. And he is telling the story of how it spread and how the spirit of love and light and healing moved through people from one to the other and one to the other. And people wanted to take classes and be teachers. And at first they thought, we won't have ministers. That was just too organized. Well, here I am, a minister, so obviously that went by the way. But that sense of, there's more. There's more. And yet, you could be eclectic. You didn't have to follow everything they told or shared. It is your experience with the divine presence. It is how you connect with the divine presence. Every unity ministry you walk into is different. Every one. I've been in quite a few. I'm just saying. The ones in Texas and the ones in Atlanta and the ones in California and North Carolina, they got a great lot of ministries down there. And then there's Florida with palm trees in the building and, open air. You can walk in and out and you hear the water. We're all different. And that is the beauty of us. That is the beauty of us. Now, this is Oregon, right? We're a little different. Just a wee bit. Thank you for sharing. And I've had ministries in different parts of the country, never made it to the East Coast. And everyone is unique. And guess what? We get to. No one comes in and says, you gotta. Never. You get to be the unity ministry you want to be. You get to, as long as you remember, we're eclectic. We're eclectic. We get to. We are spiritual, not religious. We are not bound by rules. Now, one of the things I always was intrigued by when I very first started actually studying unity was metaphysics. I'd never heard of metaphysics, which is the understanding, the depth, the story behind the story. In other words, the teaching story in the story. And that's what our Bible is. It's teaching stories. And it's a teaching story that you can learn from 2,000 years later. Because it's your story. It's my story. We can interpret that story and look at that story and say, that means this to me. That means this to me. Now, Charles and Myrtle loved the idea of metaphysics. Had you ever heard of metaphysics before you came to Unity? I had not. Metaphysics? Sounded hard. Sounded like you needed a degree. I wasn't very good at physics or chemistry. I don't know, biology even. I didn't know how I was going to do in metaphysics. So metaphysics is finding the hidden meaning in the story. That's just for you. So I look at that story, I hear something or see something, and you see it differently. Yay! Great, because it's meant for your heart, your life. Now, many people, he writes about in the Unity Way, were interested in Eastern teachings. So were the Fillmores. So were the Fillmores. And they were intrigued by meditation, what we do every Sunday, meditation. Not like the Buddhists, but very similar. Sitting in the silence. Can you imagine Charles and Myrtle being vegetarians in Kansas City in 1890? And they started a vegetarian restaurant where hundreds and hundreds of people, even people that didn't go to Unity, lined up to go to that vegetarian restaurant because it was so good. Except Charles really liked ice cream, so they had ice cream. The realization that we can be one and unique. We can be one and unique. Because every person here has their own view. We have our own background, our own level of understanding. We have our own experience with the Christ within, with the love within, whatever we call it, it is. And truth is truth. I was reading in the next book that Mr. Marcus Bach wrote, Major Religions of the World. This great book, I'm sure it's out of print, 1990s, about, he takes each one of the world religions and shares. I'm going to just read one little piece here. Thank you for your patience. Many seek for God. As far back as we can glimpse into time and space, there were many paths up the mountain and many camps along those paths. There were also many guides and showers of the way. All were convinced that their path was the best. All were searching, speculating, and finding the footprints of God. And always there was the summit, belonging. Wherever people live, they worship, and wherever they worship, there too is God. With the Hindu chanting mantras, the bowing of the head at the shrine, the Jew reading the Torah, the Parasite bowing to the sacred fire, Confucius who reverently beholds the tablets of the temple, the Taoist burning incense on a golden altar, the Buddhist spinning the prayer wheel, the Shinto making pilgrimages. There is one God, one God, one God. And as we come to this spot, I'm reminded of a story I love. May have shared it here. It's been one of the best teaching stories for me as I've worked with groups of people. And it's how the Native American elders teach their children to be part of a tribe. And we're a tribe. Are we a tribe? Yes. I'm in your tribe, I know. You called me here, I'm here. In the tribe are the children. And in the tribe, every year, they have ceremony. And they sit the children in a circle. And they take a spiritual, what to them is a spiritual emblem, and they put it in the center of the circle. Now, it might be an arrow, might be a feather, might be a peace pipe. The chief decides what it will be that year, and it's put in the center. And then they go around the circle, and every child says what they see. One child sees a feather. Another child sees wood. Another child sees the pipe, the bowl of the pipe. Another child sees maybe nothing because of where they're sitting in the circle. And the chief shares with the children, this is called being part of a tribe. We all see something differently, and that's the way we work together. We need you to tell us about the feather. We need you to tell us about the bowl of the pipe. We need you to say, I can't see. We need everyone. It's still one object. And all the viewpoints are as important as the other. Isn't that the world we want to live in? Aren't we part of a tribe that sees everything different and everything alike? That's called unity. And as unity is at this time, what was the phrase you used, Angela, this tide of change? Turning. This is a time of turning, and this isn't just a time of turning for unity. This is a time of turning for the world. We're turning. And it's either going too fast or too slow. I don't know which, but it is in movement. And the people across the world are now in our hearts and our homes. And we are in their hearts and their homes. And we can't separate from that. That's the world we live in. So I'm going to ask you to ponder on this for a moment. Are you eclectic about religion? Are you eclectic about your way you see unity? Are you eclectic? Do you see one hole here and that's all there is? Do you see a wide expanse? Are you willing to have differences? Do we all have to share the same viewpoint? No, we got one no. Yes, no, maybe. Maybe. This is the discovery time. We don't get to stop the wheels, it starts to turn. Have you noticed that? I don't have the power to stop that wheel. Do I want power to stop that wheel? On some days I do. Of course I do. And that's how we grow. That's how we grow, is through change. And I can say I'm eclectic about religion. I'm spiritual, not religious. I love metaphysics. We know Charles and Myrtle Fillmore worked with many rabbis to understand the writings and what the names of the places in the Bible meant. These are not literal. Well, they are places, but they represent philosophy and spiritual places. It was more about that. And the other part is the feeling that we're part of the whole. However we see it, we're never separated. That's the part I love about unity. We can never be separated from God. Impossible. Why? Because it's right here. It's right here. We can't get away from it. We're loved no matter what. We can't be unloved. We can't be uncherished. We can't be part of the puzzle. We are. And it's a delusion if we think we can be separate. And we can't be separated from each other here. Even if we see things differently, that's okay. Different cars, different foods, different clothing, those are outer things. The inner, the Christ within, the Buddha within, the love within, whatever you call it. Truth is truth. Love is love. Light is light.